Welcome to day 17 of Advent of Tess 2025. Today we're folding a pattern I designed named Dervishes, and you'll notice that it has closed triangle and open trapezoid twists on both sides of the paper. And the way I'm flipping it, it makes it look exactly the same, but notice that on this side, the trapezoid is connecting to the right of the top triangle in the pyramid, and on the other side, that trapezoid is connecting on the left. So it's actually a mirror image. This is another isoarea pattern like we've been folding several of so far. And let's go ahead and get started folding. I'm going to start by finding the center of the paper. And I just visually found it by following in grid lines from the corners. But you can also find that by folding in half in one direction and then folding a grid line out to the corner to find that center point. With the center point identified, we're going to zoom in, and I'm going to start by folding a closed triangle twist on this side. More specifically, I'm going to fold a series of 6 triangle twists around the center, starting with my mountain fold that's passing one grid spacing away from the center. I've specifically drawn it so this is directly one space out, one space further up than the center line of my grid. And I will have a valley fold one space away from the center in this direction. And these will make a closed triangle twist. So I've got a mountain in one direction, a valley and mountain in the other direction, and then the 3 mountain folds meet at a single grid intersection because this is a closed triangle. If you want to fold this without marking on the paper, we're going to be following these 2 folds closest to the center out to the corners. And this one is one space away from the center line. So it's going to hit the corner down here, one space away from the corner. And we're going to put the valley on the far side, away from the central grid line. Then on the second pleat that we defined relative to the center, our valley fold is on the grid line one space away from the center, which is one space away from the corner, and the mountain is further away from the corner, which of course folds to be along that grid line going to the corner. Then if you want some extra confirmation that you've gotten it right, the third mountain fold of this twist will be one space above the right-hand side corner. So with all that in place, we can press on our 3 pleats to squash the closed triangle twist. And I'll smooth it out nice and smooth with the bone folder. So this side is going to be our side A. Flipping to the opposite side, I can hold the pattern up to the light to identify my center point in there for side B. And I'm going to put new closed triangle twists on each of these 2 pleats bordering the center. I'll start with this one somewhat arbitrarily. So I'll rotate that pleat so it's heading out horizontally to the right-hand side of the paper, and then put in a closed triangle twist. The corner of the twist is going to be at the closed hole, so the center is one space out. So center of the twist, one space out from the closed hole. And I can go ahead and set up that new twist and press to squash. While we're on excuse me, while we're on this side of the paper, I can go ahead and take the other pleat that's going around the center from that closed triangle hole on the other side, rotate that one so it's going off to my right, and put in another closed triangle twist, again with the center one space out from the closed hole, so the corner of the twist is exactly at the closed hole, and therefore also at the next triangle twist around the center. From here, there's no more triangles we can add on side B, so I'm going to grab these two parallel pleats and flip over to side A. These two parallel pleats will both get a closed triangle twist on them, and I'm going to put a triangle wrap in between. So let's see, I'm going to start by marking really quick exactly where these triangle centers are going to go. And I can set up on my topmost layer pleat my three-way intersection. This mountain is going to go 2 spaces before it hits the valley of the next twist down. The valley corresponding to this new mountain is going to be further out from the center, and that's going to allow us to make our triangle wrap, getting these three-way intersections of valley folds down below and mountain folds up above. And in order to get this to lay down, we're also going to need to set up the closed triangle twist on the lower of our 2 original parallel pleats. With those 2 set up, I can press to squash. Notice that for this, I'm pressing kind of on the sharp edges of the twist to get that started. This is something that works really well with Skytone. Your paper may vary. And I can get these twists all set up. Then I'll flip over to side B and take that triangle wrap, flip over the free pleat, and squash my new closed triangle twist. Now, one of the interesting things about this pattern, and I'm going to flip back to side A, one of the interesting things about this is that there's actually 3 different spacing variables for these patterns. It's kind of a family of patterns that we're folding one version of today. So the first spacing is how close are these triangles to each other. The second spacing is how close are the triangles to the trapezoids. And the third spacing is how close are the trapezoids to each other on the double depth pleats. Each of these variables is independent and can be changed. I picked a particular combination of those variables: dense between the triangles, dense between the triangles and trapezoids, and an extra space between the trapezoids on the double depth pleats for today's pattern to get it to fit well on 24 grid divisions. And if it's repeated further out, you get a pattern like this. But you can choose other spacing. So this one has more space between the triangle and the trapezoid and less space between trapezoids on opposite sides. And you can really tweak this pattern to fit your preferences. Both of those 2 patterns that I just showed are in the Advent of Tess ebook this year. And there are many more spacing variation options that have not been explored yet. So starting off on side A, So this is the side that matches the crease pattern, and I'm going to go ahead and match the orientation of the crease pattern as well. So if you've signed up at training.gatheringfolds.com/advent with your reminder emails, you'll be getting the link to the hub page every day, and on that hub page is the PDF download for each day. And that has some of the information that's in the Advent of Tess ebook, like the crease pattern for the daily patterns on 24 grid divisions, but it does not have the full crease patterns with repeats with multiple different ways of finishing the pattern. So you can see a crease pattern of what I'm folding right now for free, and that option is available through training.gatheringfolds.com/advent. But continuing with the tutorial, we're going to have a new trapezoid twist connect to a triangle on the opposite side. One of the things about this pattern is every single twist on every single pleat is connecting, or I guess more specifically, every pleat is going between a twist on one side and a twist on the opposite side. So in order to fold a twist on this side, it needs to have pleats coming from twists on the other side. And for this trapezoid, I'm going to have a new valley fold come out this direction. I'm going to have a mountain fold out this direction, parallel to that valley fold. These two pleats, so this one and the next one coming in, are at 60 degrees, which means that we're going to do a compound wrap. So I'll open up the pleat from the triangle on this side, pop down where the valley of the new pleat hits, let that mountain and valley zig then zag. And then I also need to know where my third single depth pleat is in this pattern and the one we'll do tomorrow. All of the triangle twists connect to the trapezoids on the middle single depth pleat. So if this is the middle single depth pleat, then I need another pleat in this direction, and I'm making an open trapezoid twist. So I want to make this appear like I'm making an open hexagon puffy star. So we've got the points of the puffy star, but of course we're making this a trapezoid instead of a hexagon. So the mountain fold of the middle single depth pleat becomes the mountain of the double depth pleat. Now this third single depth pleat is going under an existing triangle, and we don't necessarily like that. It's fine, it would be going on grid lines, but it would cut through two different triangles, and that's kind of annoying. So I'm going to make a three-way, well, three if you consider the mountain before the triangle was squashed, plus these two. Four if you consider these two sides of the triangle. Basically, I'm doing a compound wrap. So three-way intersection of mountains, three-way intersection of mountains. Got the three-way intersections of valleys down in here and inside there. And we can let all of that fold up. So I've got a compound wrap on both sides of this trapezoid. And then the valley of my double depth pleat is going to be right-handedly around my mountain of the double depth pleat. So basically it's going to be up in here, cutting that puffy hexagon star in half. And we can press to squash. So for this ring around the center, all we're doing is adding one trapezoid twist at a time, working our way around. Technically speaking, we could probably do like we did the triangles, doing all the ones we can on one side, then all the ones we can on the other. But I like to go around in a particular order, and it tends to work out a bit smoother, at least more predictable. Then we'll flip over, and I'm going to say that, and basically we have to choose which of these compound wraps are we going to turn into a trapezoid next. I'm going to say this one, because the reference for finding the third pleat is pretty straightforward. We're going to have the valley fold come from the closed triangle hole and hit one space out from this next triangle corner. Going to open up the paper, put in a compound wrap there. Then I'm opening up the compound wrap that I had set up from the other side and extending the mountain fold of the middle single depth plate to make my double depth plate. And notice I'm putting this valley down kind of out away from the triangle twists. This will feel a little bit different from the previous twist because now it's twisting left-handedly. It's connected on a pleat with that right-handed trapezoid. So as we go around, we're going to be alternating right and left-handed trapezoid twists. Okay, so now we know we want to go around in this direction. So I'm going to grab that next compound wrap, flip over. I'm going to add the new compound wrap, and I'll just draw the valley because that's the important reference. So I'll open up the pleat from the triangle twist on this side, pop down where the valley goes through, let the valley zigzag, and by letting the valley zigzag, I also have to have a mountain that zigzags too. Then I'll open up the compound wrap that I had left behind. This means erasing the pleat that was going out to the edge. I'm going to extend the mountain fold of the middle of my 3 single depth pleats and put in my double depth pleat and squash the trapezoid twist. Flipping over, I'm going to do the same thing, except this time my triangle is a little covered. So I'm going to lift up so I can see what I'm doing while I find my new compound wrap. And notice I have this additional pleat that I'm just keeping flat and letting the compound wrap go through as if the pleat had just fused in place. Then we'll open our compound wrap from before, put in the new trapezoid twist, get that valley of the double depth pleat on the right side of the mountain fold, and press to squash. And flipping over, I go to repeat again. And what I find is that I have something different going on here. I'm still going to have my valley come out this way, but this time when it contacts that next pleat, that's at 120 degrees. That calls for a triangle wrap. So this time I'm going to open up my compound wrap first to free up this extra pleat that was in place. I'm going to pop the valley down and put in my triangle wrap. So these two segments are straight on the same grid line. Might not look like it with the paper folded. And that's going to make a triangle wrap on top of the compound wrap that I already had in place. And if you want to see a smoother video of putting in the triangle wrap over the compound wrap, this is something that I teach in my advanced wraps video on YouTube. There are lots of ways to get into it. Often, if I already have the 3 pleats set up and I didn't start with the compound wrap, then I'll actually work it from the other side of the paper. So that's what the advanced wraps video shows. So this is a very handy trick for having 3 single depth pleats that are feeding into an open trapezoid or an open hexagon, and have that stable while we're folding very close by on the other side of the paper. Flipping over, I'll then open that triangle wrap and compound wrap combo. Notice when I'm doing this, I'm moving this mountain fold down 1 spacing so that the mountain of the double depth pleat can follow on the same grid line as the mountain of the middle single depth pleat. And then my valley will be further away from the center. And press to squash. So this is the key motif that we're working with for today. And we'll actually get into a little bit of how to get to repeats of the center, because this is the whole motif and the repeats are relatively dense. I'm going to choose to flip back to the A side for this next step, just so it looks the same if you're working on this from the crease pattern. So on this side, we're going to look at, okay, where do we put the next trapezoid twist? And the key measure here is that along this double depth pleat, so notice there's 2 grid spaces between the mountain and the valley fold, and that will be true of all 6 of the pleats going out to the edge right now. The key measure is that from way back under where the mountain starts, 1 space under the pleat to the next trapezoid, we're going to count out 1, 2 spaces, and then have our new valley fold for the next trapezoid twist come out. And that's something that I'm counting from the crease pattern, but you could also say, hey, this valley comes right to the end of that little hole. And it looks like a right triangle hole, but it's for the trapezoid twist on the other side. So to make, and by the way, we're connecting the next trapezoid twists in this round, and we're going to, there's going to be some options. I'm going to show kind of the 2 options of how much you do in this ring around the center, and we're going to default to folding whole twists. So for this trapezoid that we're adding, because it's a double depth pleat, it's not going to a triangle twist today. Tomorrow it will. But for this pattern, it's going to a trapezoid. And I said where the valley of the single depth pleat needs to hit. The mountain of that single depth pleat will hit 1 space further away. So that's the first single depth pleat direction. The second direction, we know that the mountain fold of the middle single depth pleat is the same grid line as the mountain of the double depth pleat. And we can say, hey, I see which way this twist is rotating. My valley is going to be one space above that mountain. And then we come on around and we say, hey, I need a third single depth pleat direction. And for the open trapezoid twist, the third direction of single depth pleat hits the center line. I'll just draw on here, not exactly on the line because the line is folded, but that third direction is going to come and hit one space further out along the mountain fold through the center than the first direction hit. So first, second stays on the same mountain, third hits one space out. And that gets us our open trapezoid twist, and we can press to squash. From here, I'm going to flip the paper over and we'll take a look at some of the options for the layers around the center. So I want to show you real quick in the tiling, which is another thing that comes with the crease pattern when you sign up at training.gatheringfolds.com. In this tiling, we've got our central 6 triangles, then our next 6 trapezoids, which we've already completed. If we wanted to add just one small layer of twists next, we would be adding these 6 trapezoids that connect on the double depth plates. So the way that these shapes work is that each edge of the shape represents a pleat, and the shape is connected to another shape that shares that same pleat. These longer edges have more distance between the mountain and the valley folds of the pleat. So these are the double depth plates that connect the 2 trapezoid twists. And this is how I knew that the connection to the triangle was on the middle of the 3 single depth plates. So from there, if we add on, say, these 2 trapezoids, in order to have a smooth boundary, and I'll scroll down, we want smooth boundaries as we're adding these layers, I would need to set up some kind of triangle situation for both of these 2 trapezoid twists in order to get things to sit nice. So back to the paper, or actually one more thing while we're on the topic of the tiling. So I can add just a single layer and get those triangle bits holding the place of the future trapezoids, depending on my spacing. It might or might not work, depending on which exact variant of this pattern that you're folding. Or I can always go 2 layers out, fold full twists, and get to a nice smooth boundary, which is the end of what we're folding today. And if you like that kind of analysis of these patterns, definitely check out Tessellation Academy. So for this area, if I want to see, okay, with this particular arrangement of things, how would it look if I had the 2 trapezoids and then stopped? I would take a look at this pleat down here. It's a double depth pleat coming from a trapezoid on the opposite side. I'm going to have my valley coming out from the end of that open hole. And the valley is followed by a mountain 1 grid space away. The mountain of the double depth pleat is the mountain of the middle single depth pleat. And then the third single depth pleat is going to hit one grid space. So this mountain is hitting one grid space further out than this initial mountain that's one space further than the valley fold that hits at the corner of the open hole. So that is what I would have in place for this trapezoid, which I can go ahead and press to squash. And this is causing a pleat overlap over here. Now, if I wanted to resolve this overlap and then move on to future twists, I would start with a valley fold on here, because we can start to see these trapezoid corners are going to all meet up. And I would set this up even though this is the double depth pleat, this is the double depth pleat. You would think this would be the double depth pleat, and it will be eventually. But if I was stopping at this stage instead of going 2 layers of twists out, I would make it a single depth pleat with a 3-way intersection above and a 3-way intersection below. So the triangle wrap and 3-way intersection, you could lay that flat and go around and do just those steps on all 6 edges of the pattern. But for today's purposes, we're going to go a little bit further. And trying to think specifically the easiest way to do this. I think it would actually be rewinding a little bit, so I can get the corresponding triangle in here and then jumping into the next twists. So again, this is an alternative method. It's not necessarily easier or harder, but we're gonna get into it. Okay, so you see how we have that trapezoid slit there, and we have this one pleat that doesn't have any parallel pleats. That one pleat is going to go to our next triangle twist. And the spacing for this is that the valley of this new triangle is going to lay right along the folded mountain of the next direction of pleats. Our mountain will be one space away, and we can use that to set up a closed triangle twist and press to squash. Notice that our slit transformed into that right triangle hole that we've been seeing everywhere else. From here, I'm going to take this pleat. So this is a single depth pleat. I had mentioned earlier that the valley would come right to the corner of this trapezoid, the corner of the hole, the corner of the closed triangle twist, and this will be our double depth pleat for our new trapezoid twist. And I'm going to have a pleat overlap here as I set up this double depth pleat, and the mountain fold of the double depth pleat continues as a mountain out the other side of the twist. This goes straight under the corner of that triangle twist we just made, and we can make a triangle wrap under that corner. So instead of folding through the triangle twist and the trapezoid on the other side, I'm doing a 3-way intersection of valleys down in here. Conveniently, I drew just enough of the valley fold on the triangle twist. That's going to lock in place. And then, like we've been talking about with the trapezoid twists, if we know the double depth pleat, we know the first, second, and then the third single depth pleat. That mountain is hitting one space away from the first single depth pleat. With that in place, I can press to squash. Flipping the paper over, I'm going to take that three-way intersection, the triangle wrap, and turn it into a closed triangle twist. This will put the corner of the twist on the edge of the paper. So I'm pressing gently, making sure to spread the paper out into that corner on the edge. And then I need to figure out, okay, how do we resolve this pleat overlap here between a double depth pleat? I've got single depth pleats. There's a lot going on. Well, I have a clue in the placement of my trapezoid twists, but I also have a clue that I can read from the crease pattern, which is that I'm going to have these great big hexagons where I have 2 spaces of valley and then 2 spaces of mountain, then 2 spaces of valley again, and 2 spaces of mountain. Pardon the messy drawing there. And then 2 spaces of valley and 2 spaces of mountain. So I know I'm going to have a valley fold out in this direction, and it's going to belong to one of my trapezoid twists. And I can even look at my crease pattern and say that's going to be a single depth pleat. I can also say, hey, this pleat here is double depth. So that's the only double depth pleat that's going into this trapezoid twist. So I can open things up and notice here that the angle between this new pleat coming in and this existing pleat is 120 degrees. So we're going to do some kind of triangle wrap. And that triangle wrap situation is going to be a little funky. We're going to send, so we've got our valley, we've got our mountain 1 grid spacing away. We're going to send those both down until the valley down below hits the valley of our double depth pleat down here. You'll notice on my paper there's some extra folds in place because that's where I folded the trapezoid twist before, but we don't need to worry about those. And okay, so I'm just verifying for myself that this does in fact work out. It's gonna look real weird. And I'll take a sip of water while you take a look at that. We're getting into all of the advanced wraps, and trust me, we're going to use them over the next few days. So what's going on here is we're sending a single depth pleat over a double depth pleat. It's going down, it's bouncing at the bottom, but it's only carrying off 1 grid spacing worth of depth. There's still another grid spacing worth of depth that's coming down in the direction of the double depth pleat. So what we're going to do after that is set up a compound wrap where we have the next mountain fold of our trapezoid twist, but that's going to immediately go into the compound wrap, coming down in here. And we would normally see another mountain going off this way, but it just so happens that because of the interaction with the double depth pleat, that becomes an unfolded grid line. The closest mountains and valleys in here, we've got this little valley off of the three-way intersection of mountain folds, and then 2 grid spacings away, we have our mountain for the trapezoid twist, which is incredibly hard to draw at the edge of the paper. So what happened is that this pleat from the trapezoid twist added onto the pleat from the compound wrap, and the valley of the pleat from the trapezoid twist canceled out the mountain of the pleat from the compound wrap, which is why we have a double depth pleat coming out this way, which would be more prominent if we had more paper. And we can set all that up and press to squash. Flipping the paper over, and this is pretty much the reason why you might not want to do these 2 layers of twists at the same time. It's a matter of personal opinion, really. So we've got all of these nested wrapping structures, and I'm going to pull them all open. And one thing that I have to make sure of, besides finding all the pleats for my new trapezoid twist, is that I've restored the pleats for the trapezoid on the other side. So I need to make sure, now flipping back to side A, that that trapezoid does in fact have a pleat coming off of that corner in the appropriate direction, that it has the valley fold in here that was canceled out before. Because I'm going to take this opportunity, like we did with the rhombus and triangle twist, when we have these 2 pleats coming together and we're going to need a triangle on both sides, I'm going to go ahead and set up 2 triangle twists as well. I'm going to have my valley fold come along this grid line, which interrupts the mountain, the middle single depth pleat mountain. And we'll put in a triangle wrap down here and a triangle twist up above, again making sure that the folds from the trapezoid on the other side stay in place. And I'll squash first the trapezoid, which went in place really, really easy for me because that's the one that I did already, that I took out to show the 2 layers of twists. And then squash the triangle. This triangle corner will also be right at the edge of the paper. So I'm doing this very carefully, very gently. And again, making sure that this flap stays folded. So we keep the trapezoid edge from the other side. And with all of that in place, I will flip over and squash the new triangle twist, which might look a little bit familiar because that's how we started this previous run of trapezoids. So from here, I'll lift this layer up. It's a single depth pleat, and we're going to add in, so this will be our double depth pleat for the new trapezoid twist. So our double depth pleat means that the mountain is 2 grid spaces away. It also means that that's the mountain of the middle single depth pleat, which is going to go under the triangle twist, which we will wrap out of the way, locking it securely in place. And we'll have just a little bit of a third single depth pleat. And press to squash. And flipping over, we can bring the triangle twist out and squash it. That time my edge did not cooperate, so I'm going to go in and smooth it out with the bone folder. There we go. So you can see the density, the high density in the middle was really necessary to fit all of this onto the paper. Okay, here we have that hexagon of alternating mountain and valley folds. And this pleat that's coming in, by the way, that hexagon is a position of 3-fold rotational symmetry in the broader pattern. This is what it looks like on the other side of the paper. And I can therefore say, okay, this pleat is exactly the same as this pleat, and that's a single depth pleat. So I'm going to have this new single depth pleat come and interact with my double depth pleat. We're going to get that single depth over double depth triangle wrap that still has 1 grid spacing worth of contraction coming out in this direction. And don't forget, we've got our trapezoid twist up here. I've got that single spacing of contraction coming into the middle of my trapezoid twist. So what do? I do a compound wrap. Now that compound wrap, the mountain adds to the valley of my next pleat direction for the trapezoid. So that is actually going to be, once this is flattened, that grid line there is going to lay down flat instead of being a mountain fold of the compound wrap. Like so. And we can adjust that trapezoid point because that is also coming right to the corner and on top of a lot of thick folds. And then flipping over, we'll open all of that up. Noticing, okay, this is my double depth pleat. The mountain's going to carry through as the single depth pleat, and my third single depth pleat needs to be up in here. That valley is hitting right at the open hole. And I'm restoring also the proper orientation of the pleats from this trapezoid. So this one had been shifted to the next grid line over. It's back in here, but not for terribly long because we're also going to put in the triangle above and triangle below. So that move, I realize I did very quickly. So we've got these two converging mountain folds, one space from where they hit. I'm going to put in a valley, which allows me to set up a triangle twist above and a triangle wrap below. And with that in place, I can press to squash the trapezoid and then the triangle twist. And that triangle really wanted to fight me, but it is in place now. And then flipping over, we'll take that triangle that was wrapped, turn it into a full twist. Ah, that's why the triangle wanted to fight me. The valley fold was not on the grid line. No. Let's see if I can get that a bit more precise. Air folding is often your friend when it comes to twists at the edge of the paper. Okay. That one should be a bit better behaved now. And I can squash the new triangle twist. And that sets us back at the beginning of our cycle. So I'm going to lift up the pleat that I just folded the triangle over, find my new double depth pleat with the valley coming to this collection of twist corners. This is a double depth pleat of a trapezoid twist, so the mountain fold continues across, and we'll do a triangle wrap to resolve that interaction. And you'll notice that I've been setting up a lot of unfriendly overlaps on here. This is from experience mostly. This particular pattern could probably go the other direction and be okay. But there are some patterns coming up where we will be folding trapezoids in these kinds of configurations. And by these kinds, I mean with the unfriendly overlaps that will be quite a bit trickier, actually. So then flipping over, I can squash the triangle that I had started. Or rather that I had set aside. That one is also fighting me. And then I'm finding that hexagon of blank space with the alternating mountain and valley folds and putting in a single depth pleat with a triangle wrap to deal with the double depth pleat. And then I'm recognizing, hey, this other pleat feeding into that space, that is a double depth pleat. So I'm going to have these mountains for my trapezoid twist. But then I'm going to modify things by taking this mountain away and turning it into a compound wrap. And then that mountain of this three-way intersection for the compound wrap just kind of wraps in under because of the valley fold of this pleat, canceling it out. And we can press to squash. And flip over, And we have all of these lovely nested bits that are holding our place. And we can restore. So notice in here I'm restoring the pleat on the trapezoid on the back there. And I'm saying, okay, here's my double depth pleat. It's coming out over this way. That means that, so I'm identifying where the pleats of the trapezoid need to go. And then I have these intersecting mountain folds where I'll put a triangle above and triangle below. And then I can press to squash first the trapezoid and then the triangle, making sure to respect that little leg from the triangle, no, the trapezoid on the other side. And then I'll flip over and squash the triangle twist. This gets me back into my loop. So I'll lift the next pleat, put in a double depth pleat with the valley coming to the corner of the trapezoid and that previous triangle. The extension of the mountain will get eaten up by a triangle wrap. And I'll find my remaining pleat of this trapezoid and press to squash. From there, I'll flip over, squash the triangle twist that was wrapped. Maybe do a bit of air folding to get the triangle corner exactly to the edge of the paper if it's not cooperating. Then find the last side of my hexagon of alternating mountain and valley folds. Open up the overlap so I can send through a single depth pleat, valley to valley, three-way intersection, but it's only single depth, so there's still one grid spacing worth of contraction that's carrying through in the double depth direction. Then I'm going to find my trapezoid twist pleats. So the double depth pleat coming in has the through line, that mountain fold that's on the same grid line on both sides. And once I've found it, I'm immediately going to lose that through line to the compound wrap and press to squash. By the way, everything that I've been showing is also possible on a larger number of grid divisions. Nothing is relying on tucking things under on the edges or anything. And then flipping over, I'll open up those wraps, find the new trapezoid, restore the pleat of the trapezoid on the other side, and put in triangle above and triangle below. So you can see, even though it is quite a few steps, and some of those steps are rather difficult, it is in fact a repeating sequence of steps that we're doing. And fighting with the triangle twist to get the corner to actually go where it should go. And then flipping over, I'll fold the triangle twist on the other side and start the cycle over again. Starting with the double depth pleat of the new trapezoid twist. And press to squash. And then flip over. We're finding that hexagon of folds, alternating mountain and valley folds, putting in the final side as a valley. That valley is extending and bouncing off. It only eats a single grid spacing worth of the pleat though, of the double depth pleat. So we still have, oh, I forgot to squash a triangle twist in there. We'll come back to it. So then I find my new trapezoid twist pleats using my double depth pleat mountain fold as my guide. And then I'll do my compound wrap. And squash the trapezoid. And now I'll actually remember to squash this triangle twist. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, yeah, all the other triangles are there. And flipping over, I'll open up these wraps, making sure to keep this pleat coming into my new trapezoid. I'm following my double depth pleat. I'm placing the third single depth pleat. And notice here I have more pleats than I usually do. I'm going to make sure they stay folded and just do a pleat overlap of this new pleat on both of the old pleats. And then I'll have the triangle above and triangle below down here. And yes, if we had more grid, this pleat would layer over those as well. And press to squash. And squash the triangle as well. Ooh. It started as not a very happy triangle, but it's working out well. And now we're going to flip over, squash our triangle on this side. And let's see, how many trapezoids are left? Two trapezoids left, yes. So now I already have these pleats coming in here. So when I am completing this hexagon of folds, really, I wouldn't be seeing this hexagon of folds in the other repeats. I wouldn't have that trapezoid there. So this is the double depth pleat coming in. The mountain is passing under that triangle. I'll do the triangle wrap. I need to figure out a way to make the rest of these pleats a little happier. So I'm going to open things up. And I'm going to fiddle with the paper a little bit because, yeah, that's the wrap that makes that happy. And if I have this pleat passing through, can I still make it happen, is the question. Not convinced. Huh. Okay. So this is the actual process of what it looks like to figure this out. I did find a good solution, and I'm going to share it with you. So, okay. Okay. Yeah. That makes sense. Ah, surprise. Okay. So what's going on is what looks like a really complicated triangle wrap. I've got the valley of my double depth pleat in here. And this valley is continuing straight on past the valley of the trapezoid twist and going all the way to the valley of the triangle twist on the other side. Then that is making a three-way intersection. And yep. We've got all the things eventually working out. It just looks real weird. Then we've got the mountain folds of the double depth pleat doing this great big triangle wrap. So it's functioning like a double depth triangle wrap. Got all the parts of my trapezoid up here. I've got my triangle wrap back in here. I'm going to set up that double depth triangle wrap, and then I'm going to show this from the other side of the paper. So I've got this great big triangle wrap, and I'm going to, so if I just fold that triangle wrap, I'm folding through this triangle. What I'm going to do is fold that single grid spacing back, so I'm not folding through this triangle twist. And that's my wrap. Honestly, I can't say that I've ever consciously recognized that as a tactic before, but hey, it works. And then I can flip over, and this tiny triangle wrap, I can go ahead and turn into a triangle twist. Again, with the edge of the triangle at the edge of the paper, potentially causing the need for some air folding. And now I'm going to open up this wrap and put in a trapezoid twist and a triangle wrap. So I'm opening up this wrap. Notice I open the last thing I folded first and then open it up. I've got this double depth pleat coming in, so that's where my middle single depth pleat is also going to go. I have the single depth pleat in this side. Over here under the triangle corner is where I'll put my triangle wrap, And you'll notice this triangle wrap has a mountain fold going out that way. Well, that mountain fold is going to become neutralized by our third direction. Notice for that triangle wrap, we're sticking a mountain on top of this valley for the third single depth pleat. That just erases it. This instead becomes a double depth pleat going out this way. And we can press to squash. And flipping over, one final twist, we've got that triangle wrap that we will turn into a closed triangle twist. So that was a lot of twists on the paper. It was a lot of tricky wraps, but we made it through. And this pattern is named Dervishes because for me it looks like a lot of skirts flared out like spinning dancers are wearing them. So there's a lot going on in this pattern. Like I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of spacing variables, 3 different spacing variables in fact. And you could make this pattern easier for yourself, make the wraps easier, make everything else easier by adding more space between the twists. So this version is called Dancing Pyramids, and actually it was recently in a British Origami Society model collection, and it made the back cover of the book. But what I wanted to say is that this one keeps the dent spacing with the triangles, adds an extra space between the triangle and trapezoids, but then it contracts a space between the trapezoids on the double depth pleats. So if you wanted to make this easier for yourself, maybe keep the triangles close, add space to the trapezoids, and then keep the spacing we use today between those trapezoid twists so they're not really crunched up over each other. And then you keep your landmark of the hexagons of folds. So that is all for today's pattern. Again, if you'd like to learn more about those spacing variables, about the crease patterns for those patterns, definitely check out the Advent of Tess ebook at gatheringfolds.com, origamiusa.org, or origamishop.com. And you can also find more information about these kinds of patterns inside of Tessellation Academy, my membership that you can learn more about at training.gatheringfolds.com/academy. And that is what we have for today. Tomorrow we will start with the same center, and then, as I hinted earlier, put double depth triangle twists on those double depth pleats. So happy folding everyone, and see you tomorrow.